Our topic for today is the expansion of voting rights throughout the history of the United States. This goes along with Chapter 10, Section 2, which discusses this in greater detail. So make sure you also read Chapter 10, Section 2. At the outset of our government under the Constitution, for all our talk of democracy, we really didn't back it up. When the Constitution was ratified, only 6% of Americans could vote. And that meant white males over the age of 21 who owned a lot of property. So white male landowners over the age of 21 could vote. And back in 1789, that was really only about 6%. So about 94% of the population was not eligible to cast their vote. A lot of the history of our government and a lot of the history of the United States is about the expansion of voting rights. Between the 1820s and 1850, every state in the country at that point eliminated the property requirement. So the first barrier to fall was that of having to be wealthy. You still had to be a white male, and you still had to be over the age of 21, but you did not have to own a certain amount of property anymore. After the Civil War, African American men become the next major group to get the right to vote. However, as we know, there were a lot of barriers. So for a period of about 80 years, a lot of states, mostly in the South, but there were also some instances in the North, of states putting barriers in place to keep African American men from voting, even though they were legally allowed to vote. By 1920, women had gotten the right to vote. Women like the three women in this photo, who were called suffragettes, had waged a long campaign to get the right to vote. And by 1920, the 19th Amendment was passed, which gave women the right to vote. In 1924, Native Americans were the next group gaining both citizenship and voting rights. 1965 was an important year. That's the year the Voting Rights Act was signed, and that eliminated a lot of the obstacles that states had put in place to keep African Americans from being able to vote. Things like poll taxes and literacy tests that were designed to unfairly block African Americans from voting. Those were eliminated by the Voting Rights Act. 1971, younger citizens down to the age of 18 gained the right to vote, and that remains the voting age today. Today, voter registration and really voting itself has been made easier and more convenient than it probably ever has been. It's extremely easy to get yourself registered to vote. It's extremely easy to vote. As you go and vote now, most areas use these electronic voting machines, like the one you see in the picture, where you simply touch the candidate of your choice and you vote electronically. Now, in terms of the future, some questions to consider. Can we make voting even easier? Are there ways to make it more accessible for everyone who is eligible to vote to be able to vote? Should it be mandatory? Even in the highest turnouts in the United States, we still really only get about half the people who are eligible to vote go out and do it. So could we make it easier for those people? Maybe. There are a lot of ideas. Should we make it mandatory? Maybe. That's an idea as well. Some things to consider there in terms of voting rights in the future.